I never thought a cracked phone screen would be the thing that finally opened my eyes. It was a Tuesday morning in March, one of those gray Philadelphia days where the sky hangs so low you can almost touch it. I was at my sister Michelle's house, dropping off another check, this time for $32,000 to cover their quarterly supplier payments. The marketing agency she ran with our brother David had been my pet project for almost 6 years. My investment. My legacy, I thought. My way of keeping our family close after Mom died. If you've ever been the family glue, the one who holds everyone together no matter what it costs you, then you already know where this is going. But please, stick with me. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from, because I need to know I'm not alone in this. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about betrayal and the power of taking your life back, check the description box below. I promise you won't regret it. Michelle's phone was sitting on her kitchen counter, face up, screen shattered in the top corner from where she dropped it the week before. She'd asked me to swing by the Apple store to get it fixed. Typical Michelle, always asking for one more favor. I'd said yes, of course. I always said yes. I picked up the phone, and that's when I saw it. A notification banner. Just a sliver of text from their group chat. The one called The Real Ones. I'd always wondered what they talked about in there. Michelle, David, and our youngest sister, Rebecca. The three of them, tight as thieves since childhood, while I'd always been the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who'd graduated early, built a successful consulting firm, and never asked for anything in return. The preview message was from David. She'll never stop, LOL. It's like she needs us to need her. My hand froze. My pulse hammered in my ears. I should have put the phone down. I should have walked away. But something in my gut, some instinct I'd been ignoring for years, made me swipe up. Michelle's passcode was still Mom's birthday. She'd never changed it. The chat opened, and my entire world crumbled in the space between one heartbeat and the next. The messages went back months. Hundreds of them. I scrolled, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone myself. David, 2 weeks ago. Just got another deposit. $15,000 this time. She's so fucking gullible. Rebecca, last month. I almost feel bad, but then I remember she literally thrives on this. Like being needed is her whole personality. Michelle, 3 months ago. She asked if she could come to dinner on Friday, and I told her we had plans. She looked like a kicked puppy. It's pathetically desperate, honestly. David again. The approval seeking is out of control. Remember when she cried at Thanksgiving because we didn't use her seating chart? Rebecca. She'll keep giving as long as we keep taking. It's not our fault she's built her entire identity around bankrolling us. I stood in Michelle's kitchen, staring at words that burned themselves into my brain. The smell of her vanilla candles suddenly made me nauseous. The photos on her fridge, photos that included me, smiling, hugging them, believing I was loved, felt like evidence of my own stupidity. 6 years. Over $400,000 of my own money. Countless hours of free consulting. Connections I'd leveraged, clients I'd referred. I'd co-signed their business loan when the bank wouldn't approve them. I'd covered payroll 3 times when they had cash flow problems. I'd redesigned their entire brand strategy for free. And this whole time, they'd been laughing at me. The word that kept appearing in the chat was desperate. Pathetically desperate. Desperately trying to buy love. Desperate for approval. Desperate to matter to them. I kept scrolling, unable to stop, like pressing on a bruise to see how much it could hurt. Michelle, 5 months ago, she sent me another article about family businesses with a note that said, "Thought of you." I can't. David, at least the money's real. Let her have her delusions if it means we stay funded. Rebecca, honestly, I think she knows on some level. But she's too scared of being left out to stop. That last message hit me like a physical blow. Because she was right. Some part of me had always known I was trying too hard. That I was giving too much. That the relationship was unbalanced. But I told myself it was because they were busy, because they were younger, because building a business is hard. I'd been making excuses for people who saw me as nothing more than an ATM with emotional issues. I took screenshots. My hands moved on autopilot, capturing everything. Every cruel word, every casual dismissal, every joke at my expense. The evidence of my own foolishness, preserved in digital form. Then I cleared the notifications, locked the phone, and slipped it into my purse. I walked out of Michelle's house without leaving the check. For the first time in 6 years, I didn't leave the money. My drive home was a blur. I don't remember getting on the highway. I don't remember parking in my garage. I just remember sitting in my car in the silence of my empty house, the house I'd bought by myself, furnished by myself, lived in by myself because I'd been too busy taking care of everyone else to build my own life, and feeling something shift inside me. It wasn't sadness. Not yet. It was something colder, clearer. I'd spent 38 years being the good daughter, the responsible sister, the family savior. I'd been so terrified of being alone that I'd let myself become a joke. A punchline, a source of funding with legs. But here's what they didn't know. I hadn't built a successful business by being stupid. I'd built it by being strategic, methodical, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. If they wanted to see desperate, I'd show them desperate. But first, I'd show them what it felt like when the person you'd been using finally stopped playing along. I opened my laptop and pulled up every document related to their business. Every contract I'd negotiated for them. Every loan I'd co-signed. Every cent I'd ever given them, meticulously tracked in my personal financial records, because I'm nothing if not organized. The next invoice was due in 2 weeks. $47,000 for a major client campaign that would make or break their Q2 numbers. I smiled for the first time that day. It wasn't a kind smile. The hardest part wasn't planning what I was going to do. The hardest part was acting like nothing had changed. Have you ever had to smile at someone who's been betraying you? To laugh at their jokes, to hug them goodbye, to say I love you too, when every word tastes like battery acid in your mouth? If you have, then you understand why the next 2 weeks aged me in ways that had nothing to do with time. Drop a comment if you've ever had to keep playing a role after discovering the truth. And don't forget to check the description for more stories about finding your strength when people underestimate you. I went to Sunday dinner at David's house that weekend. I brought wine, the expensive kind that Michelle likes. I complimented Rebecca on her new haircut. I asked about their client projects with genuine-sounding interest, even though every word felt like swallowing glass. How's the Hendricks campaign going? I asked David, cutting into the roast chicken he'd somehow convinced his wife Emily to make even though she worked 60-hour weeks as a nurse. It's huge, David said, his eyes lighting up the way they always did when he talked about work. Biggest client we've ever landed. The production budget alone is insane. We're going to need the quarterly payment a few days early, actually, Michelle added, not quite meeting my eyes. Would that be okay? The vendor needs a deposit by the 15th. I smiled warmly. Of course. Whatever you need. Rebecca shot Michelle a look. Just a flicker, but I caught it. It said, *C. Told you, *. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood in front of David's mirror, staring at my own reflection. My eyes looked hollow. My skin had broken out along my jawline from stress. I'd lost 8 pounds in 5 days, not from trying but from the constant nausea that came with swallowing rage 3 times a day. But I'd learned something important in those 5 days. I was a much better actress than I'd ever given myself credit for. I went to Michelle's office that Tuesday. Brought her favorite coffee from the place downtown, the one that's 20 minutes out of my way. Listened to her complain about a difficult client. Offered advice she didn't take. I don't know what I'd do without you, she said, giving me a one-armed hug as I left. You'll never have to find out, I replied. The lie came so easily it scared me. I had dinner with Rebecca on Thursday. She'd just broken up with her boyfriend, again, and needed someone to talk to. I was always someone she could talk to when she needed something. I ordered us margaritas and pretended to care about her romantic drama while my mind calculated numbers, timelines, legal requirements. You're the only one who really gets me, Rebecca said, slightly drunk, squeezing my hand across the table. I squeezed back. That's what sisters are for. Another lie. But I was getting good at those. The 15th arrived. The day they needed the quarterly payment. $47,000 that would cover their vendor deposits, their contractor fees, the production costs for the Hendricks campaign that would define their entire year. My phone rang at 9 a.m. Michelle, her voice bright and expectant. Hey, just checking in about the transfer. Did you get a chance to process it? I was sitting in my home office, looking at my computer screen. At the bank transfer window I'd had open since 7 a.m. All I had to do was click confirm. Oh my God, I said, injecting panic into my voice. Michelle, I'm so sorry. My business account got flagged for suspicious activity. They've frozen everything pending a security review. Silence. Then what? When? For how long? It just happened this morning. They said it could take 7 to 10 business days. I've been on the phone with them all morning. The lies flowed like water now. I'm so sorry. I know how important this is. I could hear her breathing change. But we need that money. The vendors won't wait. We'll lose the deposits. We'll lose the entire campaign. I know. God, I know. I'm doing everything I can. I paused, letting her panic build. Do you have any other reserves? Maybe the business savings account. We don't have $47,000 just sitting around, Sarah. You know that. We've been using your investments as our primary capital source. Yes, I did know that. I knew exactly that. Because I'd looked at their financial statements, the ones they'd shared with me when I co-signed their loan. They ran lean, counting on my money to cover their big expenses. It was sustainable as long as I kept giving. But I'd stopped giving. I'll figure something out, Michelle said, her voice tight. I have to go. She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there in the silence of my office, my heart pounding but my hands steady. This was it. The moment I'd been planning for. The moment their casual cruelty started costing them something real. My phone buzzed. The group chat, the public one, the one that included me. David, Sarah, Michelle told me about your bank issue. Is there any way you can overnight a check instead? We're in a really bad spot. Rebecca, can you use a different account? A personal one? This is literally make or break for them. I stared at the messages, at the way they phrased it as my problem to solve. My bank issue. My responsibility. I opened the other chat. The real ones. The screenshots I'd saved. David's message from this morning, sent 20 minutes before he texted me. She says the account is frozen. Probably bullshit, but whatever. We need to find backup funding ASAP. Michelle's response. I fucking knew we should have diversified. We can't keep relying on her. Rebecca, can we get a bridge loan? We have to move fast before this tanks everything. David, already called 3 banks. With our debt-to-income ratio. Not happening. We're fucked unless she comes through. Michelle. She will. She always does. Just keep working on her. I smiled. Actually smiled. Because they still didn't get it. I typed a response in the public chat. I'm so sorry, you guys. The bank is being impossible. But don't worry. I'm going to drive down there in person tomorrow and sort this out. I promise I'll fix this. 3 dots appeared. Then, thank you. We really appreciate you. From David. You're a lifesaver. From Rebecca. Nothing from Michelle. She was too angry to pretend. I watched the dots appear and disappear in the real ones. Watched them panic and strategize. Watched them realize that maybe, just maybe, they'd made a mistake by treating their primary investor like a joke. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because the bank freeze was just the beginning. And they'd handed me every tool I needed for what came next. The vendor deadline passed. They lost the deposits. $32,000 gone. The Hendricks campaign collapsed before it even started. And suddenly, I was getting phone calls. A lot of phone calls. David first. His voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Sarah, what the hell is going on with the bank? It's been 6 days. They can't keep your account frozen this long. I was in my living room, glass of wine in hand, watching the sunset through my floor-to-ceiling windows. They said there was unusual activity. Large transfers. They're being really thorough. This is costing us everything, he said, and for the first time, I heard something I'd never heard from my brother before, fear. The Hendricks deal is dead. We had to refund their deposit. Our reputation is... I'm so sorry, I interrupted, my voice dripping with concern. I'm doing everything I can. Are you? The question hung in the air, sharp and suspicious. Because this is awfully convenient timing. My pulse quickened, but I kept my voice steady. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Forget it. Just fix this. Please. He hung up. Michelle came to my house 2 days later. Unannounced, furious. Her face blotchy from crying or rage or both. We need to talk. I let her in. Made her tea she didn't drink. Sat across from her in my kitchen, while she stared at me like I was a stranger. "The business is falling apart," she said flatly. "We're going to have to lay off 2 people. Maybe 3. We might not survive this." "That's awful," I said, and meant it. Not because I cared about the business anymore, but because those employees didn't deserve this. They were innocent bystanders in a war they didn't know was being fought. "Is your account still frozen?" Michelle asked, watching my face carefully. "Yes. I'm actually thinking of switching banks. This has been a nightmare." "Show me." I blinked. "What?" "Show me the bank notices. The emails. Whatever documentation they've given you about this freeze." This was it. The moment where she'd either believe me or call my bluff. I'd prepared for this. I'd known one of them would eventually demand proof. I pulled out my phone, showed her the email I'd sent to myself from a dummy account, with a subject line that read, "Account security hold, action required." The body was vague enough to be believable, official enough to look real. Michelle studied it. I watched her face, looking for the moment she decided whether to trust me. 2 weeks, she finally said. "If this isn't resolved in 2 weeks, we're going to have to make some serious decisions about the business structure." "What kind of decisions?" "The kind where we figure out how to operate without being dependent on a single investor who apparently can't keep her finances in order." The words landed exactly as she meant them to, like a slap. Like this was my fault. Like I'd somehow failed them by having my account frozen. I didn't react. Just nodded sympathetically. "I understand. That makes sense." After she left, I poured myself another glass of wine and opened my laptop. Pulled up the screenshots from the real ones. They'd been busy. David yesterday. I'm starting to think she's doing this on purpose. Rebecca, that's insane. Why would she torpedo her own investment? Michelle, maybe she finally grew a spine? Realized we don't actually worship the ground she walks on. David, she wouldn't. She needs us to need her. It's her whole pathetic thing. Rebecca, so what do we do? Michelle, we make her think we're desperate. We apologize for being distant. We make her feel important again. She'll crack. My hands clenched around my wine glass hard enough that I worried it might shatter. They thought they could manipulate me. They thought I was so desperate for their approval that all they had to do was throw me some scraps of affection, and I'd come running back with my checkbook open. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Because here's what they didn't know. I'd been talking to a lawyer. A really good lawyer. And I'd learned some very interesting things about the business loan I'd co-signed. The loan had a clause, standard for most commercial loans, that required the business to maintain certain financial benchmarks. Minimum revenue thresholds, debt-to-income ratios, cash reserve requirements. If they fell below those benchmarks, the loan became callable, meaning the bank could demand full repayment immediately. And according to their last quarterly filing, the one I'd reviewed very carefully, they were already teetering on the edge of those requirements. The loss of the Hendricks campaign, the refunded deposits, the operational chaos from the past 2 weeks, all of that had pushed them below the threshold. They just didn't know it yet, because I hadn't told them. And I was the one who'd set up their financial reporting systems. I was the one who usually caught these issues before they became problems. Not anymore. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. "I want to file a formal notice with the bank about the loan covenant violations. As a co-signer, that's within my rights, correct?" "Absolutely," she confirmed. "Once the bank is notified, they're required to investigate. If the violations are confirmed, they'll start the collection process." "How long do David and Michelle have to cure the violations?" "Typically 30 to 60 days. But given the size of the loan and the nature of the violations, the bank will probably want to see significant corrective action immediately. And if they can't provide that, then they default. The bank calls the loan. The business collapses. And as co-signer, you become partially liable for the debt. But you'd have legal recourse to recover damages from them personally if you can prove negligence or mismanagement." I smiled into the phone. "File the notice. Today if possible." "Sarah," my lawyer said carefully, "I need to make sure you understand what you're doing. This will destroy their business. Potentially their personal finances too. There's no coming back from this." "I understand perfectly," I said. "They made their choices. Now they get to live with the consequences. If you've ever wanted to watch someone who underestimated you realize their mistake too late, you know exactly how I felt in that moment. It was terrifying and exhilarating and awful all at once. And if you want to know what happened next, because trust me, it gets worse before it gets better, make sure you're subscribed and check the description box below for more stories like this. 2 days later, David called me. His voice was shaking. "Sarah, we just got a letter from the bank. They're calling the loan. They're saying we're in violation of the covenants. Did you know about this?" I let the silence stretch just long enough to hurt. "No," I finally said. "I had no idea. That's terrible. We have 45 days to repay $180,000 or they're going to force us into bankruptcy." "Sarah, we can't. We don't have that kind of money." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. We're meeting with a bankruptcy attorney tomorrow. This is over. Everything we built. It's just over." I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. Because I destroyed something real. Something that employed 7 people. Something that, underneath all the cruelty and betrayal, had been good work. But they'd done this. Not me. They treated me like an unlimited resource instead of a person. They'd mocked my love and exploited my generosity. And when I'd finally stopped giving, their entire house of cards had collapsed. Because it had always been my house. Built on my money, my expertise, my connections. They'd just been living in it, thinking they owned the place. "I'm so sorry," I told David. And weirdly, part of me meant it. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Me too." He hung up. I sat in my office, staring at my phone, wondering when exactly revenge had stopped feeling sweet and started feeling like ash in my mouth. The bankruptcy filing happened 3 weeks later. I didn't go to court. I didn't need to. My lawyer handled everything. The business dissolved. The employees found other jobs, thankfully. David and Michelle had to sell Michelle's house to cover part of the debt. Rebecca, who'd never been officially involved in the business, escaped relatively unscathed financially, but the family implosion affected her too. Because here's what happens when you blow up a family business. You blow up the family. Nobody called me for 2 months. Complete radio silence. No texts, no emails, no accidental pocket dials. It was like I'd been erased from their lives as cleanly as they'd erased their respect for me from that group chat. And in that silence, I had to confront something uncomfortable. I'd gotten exactly what I wanted, and it felt terrible. I threw myself into work. Took on 3 new clients. Traveled for conferences I didn't need to attend. Did anything to avoid sitting alone in my house with the reality of what I'd done. Because yes, they betrayed me. Yes, they'd used me. Yes, they'd mocked me behind my back while taking my money with smiles on their faces. But I'd also destroyed them. Methodically, deliberately, with full knowledge of the consequences. And I couldn't decide if that made me strong or cruel. The call came on a Tuesday in June. 3 months after the bank letter. Rebecca's number flashing on my screen. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity, or maybe loneliness, won out. "Sarah!" Her voice was small, tentative. "Can we talk?" We met at a coffee shop in Center City, neutral territory. She looked tired. Older, somehow, even though only a few months had passed. "I know what they said about you," she started, not bothering with small talk. "In the group chat. I know you saw it. Michelle told me her phone was unlocked that day. She figured it out pretty quickly after everything fell apart." I stirred my coffee, watching the cream spiral into the dark liquid. "Okay, what you did was..." She stopped, searching for words. "It was brutal. Surgical. You knew exactly how to hurt them most." "Yes," I said simply. Because there was no point denying it. "They're broke, Sarah. Michelle's living with her in-laws. David had to take a job at a corporate marketing firm doing work he hates. They're miserable. And..." I asked, my voice harder than I intended. "Am I supposed to feel guilty?" They called me pathetically desperate. They laughed about how easy I was to manipulate. They used me for years, Rebecca. Years. "I know." She looked down at her hands. "I was part of it. Not as much as them, but I was there. I said things I shouldn't have said. Laughed at jokes I shouldn't have laughed at. Why?" The question came out raw. Why wasn't I enough? Just as I was. Why did I have to be a joke? Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. Because it was easier than admitting we were taking advantage of you. If we convinced ourselves you were desperate and needy, Then we didn't have to feel guilty about taking the money. We could pretend we were doing you a favor by letting you be involved. The honesty was startling. And somehow, it hurt worse than the original betrayal. You weren't desperate, Rebecca continued. You were generous. You were trying to build something meaningful with us. And we turned that into a weakness. We made fun of the best parts of you because we were too immature and self-absorbed to appreciate them. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed around words that wouldn't come. I'm not asking you to forgive us, Rebecca said. I'm not even sure you should, but I needed you to know that we were wrong. About everything. You weren't the pathetic one. We were. We sat in silence for a long time. Around us, the coffee shop buzzed with life. People on laptops, couples on dates, students studying. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that something fundamental was breaking and reforming at our little corner table. Do you know what the worst part is? I finally said. I got my revenge. I destroyed their business, their finances, their reputation. I won. And it didn't fix anything. I'm still alone. I still don't have a family. I just have money and righteousness, and this hollow feeling in my chest that won't go away. Yeah, Rebecca said softly. Revenge is like that. Are you here to ask me to help them? I asked. Because I can't. I won't. No. I'm here because I miss my sister. The real you, not the ATM version we turned you into. And I'm here to tell you that Michelle and David miss you too, even if they're too proud or ashamed to say it. Do they? I heard the bitterness in my own voice. Or do they miss the money? Both, probably, Rebecca admitted. At first. But losing everything forced them to look at what they'd done. Really look at it. Michelle's in therapy now. She's dealing with a lot of stuff about Mom's death, about feeling inadequate, about taking that out on you. David's been different. Quieter. He calls me sometimes, just to talk about how badly he fucked up. I wanted to care. Part of me did care. But another part, the part that had spent 3 months sleeping badly, eating worse, and questioning every relationship I'd ever had, didn't have room for their redemption arc. I need time, I told her. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not defined by taking care of everyone else. That's fair, Rebecca said. Just don't lose yourself completely in the anger, okay? Because the Sarah I knew, the one before all this, she was kind and funny and would have given anything for the people she loved. Don't let them take that from you permanently. After she left, I sat alone with my coffee gone cold, thinking about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. The one who'd organized Sunday dinners and sent encouraging texts and bankrolled dreams that weren't hers. That woman had been real. Her love had been real. The fact that it was taken advantage of didn't make it less real. It made it tragic. But here's what I've learned, sitting here on the other side of revenge. Being right doesn't always feel good. Getting even doesn't heal betrayal. And sometimes, the person you hurt most when you seek revenge is yourself. I didn't forgive them that day. I'm still not sure I have, even now, even as I tell you this story months later. But I stopped feeding the anger. Stopped refreshing their social media to see how miserable they were. Stopped replaying the group chat messages in my head at 3 a.m. I started therapy. Started traveling alone and discovering that I actually enjoyed my own company. Started building friendships based on mutual respect instead of one-sided giving. Started saying no without immediately drowning in guilt. And slowly, painfully, I started to rebuild a version of myself that wasn't defined by either their betrayal or my revenge. Michelle and I had coffee last week. It was awkward. She apologized, really apologized, not the performative kind, and I listened. I didn't say I forgave her, because I'm not sure I do yet, but I didn't walk away either. David sent me a long email I haven't responded to yet. It's been sitting in my inbox for 5 days, and I open it sometimes just to stare at the words, I'm sorry, repeated in different forms throughout 12 paragraphs. Maybe I'll respond. Maybe I won't. But the point is, I get to decide. Me. Not the version of me who was so desperate to be loved that she'd accept crumbs. Not the version who was so hurt she wanted to burn everything down. Just me. Figuring out what I want, what I'm willing to give, what I deserve to receive. Here's what I want you to take from my story, wherever you're watching from, whatever betrayal has brought you here seeking vindication or validation. Yes, stand up for yourself. Yes, Protect your resources and your heart. Yes, walk away from people who see you as an ATM or a joke or a convenience. But be careful that your revenge doesn't consume more of you than the original betrayal did. Be careful that in proving you're not desperate for approval, you don't become desperate for vindication. Be careful that you don't lose the best parts of yourself in the process of punishing the worst parts of them. They called me pathetically desperate for approval. They were wrong about the pathetic part, but maybe they were right about the rest. I was desperate to belong, desperate to matter, desperate to build something lasting with the people who were supposed to love me no matter what. There's no shame in wanting to be loved. There's no shame in being generous. There's only shame in not knowing your worth and in letting people treat you like you don't have any. I know my worth now. I know exactly what it costs. $400,000, 1 failed business, 3 broken relationships, and 6 months of my life spent learning how to be whole on my own. It was the most expensive education I've ever paid for. And somehow, it was worth every penny. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the person who gave too much to people who appreciated it too little, leave a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me your story, because we're not alone in this, even when it feels like we are. And check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about finding your power, your voice, your worth when everyone around you has tried to convince you that you don't have any. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And thank you for reminding me that vulnerability isn't weakness, even when it's been used against you. It just means you're brave enough to feel everything, even when everything hurts.